Well, the other way to look at it is that we live in an era of no consequences. That, you know, what do you have to do? Often we ask, we in the world here, not in the public life, what do you have to do to get fired from your political job these days? What crimes are big enough to warrant being defeated for re-election?
But then it is interesting to ask, are there consequences of a different dimension? And let me mention two. Let's say the two of us have been pretty negative, and you ran in one district, I in another, I'm in one party, you're the other party, and we both prevail. But I've been saying some pretty difficult things about your party and its position. You've been saying some difficult things about my party and its positions. How do we, after the fact, come together to make decisions? How can we kind of do that? And then if you take the public, and the public has watched all these campaigns symbolized by ours in which we've been attacking each other, et cetera, how do they respect the process? And if you think about it, everybody knows of a law they don't like. But if you respect the process, you're law-abiding. If you don't respect the process, you're less likely to be. And then if you take a country, we've got enormous challenges, internally, externally. What if we can't play together? What if we don't respect each other? What if I don't even want to talk to you, and I certainly don't want to listen to your views? Where are we?
Isn't that where we are right now?
Well, we're moving in that direction.
I mean, you've really described what, you know, sounds like a fantastical situation that's much closer to reality than any of us would like. I mean, the fact is, as a society, we've stopped talking to people we disagree with, by and large. We retreat into our echo chambers, and politics is the most extraordinary example of that.
Well, it's an accentuation of some trends that exist elsewhere, and it doesn't reflect the neighborhood. No,
that's for sure. Now, I'm looking at a button on your lapel that says civility. Speaking of quaint, the idea of civility, oh boy, who does he think he is? The reality is you, as part of your job as chairman of the National Endowment, have undertaken this tour to promote civility.
Well, I have, and I define it as something that may involve manners, but manners are really incidental to this. Civility to me is simply whether or not one is willing to listen to someone else and take their views into consideration and to respect someone else. And if you
doesn't mean you have to agree.
That's right, don't have to agree. Yeah. But if you take American history, and we're rooted in the notion that all men are created equal. And by men, by the way, we include people that are women. But if all men are created equal, it must follow that one should respect someone else's thoughts, and that just maybe we all have something to learn from somebody else. And if we have that as a notion, and it might be I'm a strong conservative and you're a strong liberal, that there's something about what you're saying that maybe I ought to temper something of the way I think, and vice versa. And if we think in those ways, you have a capacity to govern a people and to respect each other. But on the other hand, if I, as a strong conservative, think that you're trash and think that your ideas are useless, and in fact, if the vocabulary that I use, I call you a fascist or a communist or whatever it may be.
A socialist?
Or a socialist.
That's the epithet of the day.
But that implies not that we have rival ideas, but that we're enemies. And if we're enemies, how do we possibly get along?
And yet, again, Mr. Chairman, that is exactly where much of politics is right now.
Well, it's certainly moving in that direction, and it seems to be that there's an effort that you make a point by exaggerating a point. And I often think that one can have extremely strong perspectives, and yet one is better off understating them.
Modesty in all things.
Well, there are times that one has to be very firm, but the firmer one is, the more careful in use of words one should be.
Now, you endorsed, having served for 30 years as a Republican member of Congress, you endorsed President Obama in the last election and spoke at the convention.
That's correct.
And then took a position in his administration. Is this the kind of thing that gets you drummed out of the Republican Party? Do you consider yourself a Republican still?
I definitely consider myself a Republican, mainly because I identify with the Republican heritage. When you look at both political parties, they have something to say for themselves. They been great parts of our history. We've had great Democratic presidents. We've had great Republican presidents, and some from Texas. This is important.
So there was no question in your mind that by supporting a Democratic president or going into a Democratic administration, that there's no question. You think your card is still punched by the Republicans, and they're happy to have you.
Well, I can't speak to, because I know political parties are a little bit like families, and I know I have disappointed some very good friends of mine.
Right, but there are different kinds of families. You know, are they the Corleones, or are they?
That's true.
Or are they your family? That's what kind of revenge is exacted here?
Well, when you are considering disappointment, some very fine people are disappointed that I chose, and I will tell you, the principal reason was I began public career in the United States Foreign Service, and I became convinced that the United States needed a new foreign policy and a new way of looking at the world and being looked upon, and that if we did not shift gears in that dimension, the future of the United States might well be gravely affected.
And how's it gone so far on that front?
I think the President of the United States has moved in a correct direction, and when it comes to foreign policy, and I will, all of us might have personal reservations about one decision or another, but to me, if you take the President's speech in Cairo when he called for more respect between religions, when he called for new ways of communicating between youth, I think he spoke for all of America. And if you look at the world attitudes towards this president, it's a surprisingly strong respect that's being shown to him by leader after leader.